So, hello, and welcome back to the Freethinkers podcast with me, Hugo. Today, I am doing an episode alone uh, because Alem cannot be joining me today, but he will be here in spirit, and so I shall continue forth on this journey without him for the moment being. And hopefully, he will return to us in his grace next time we meet. So, for today's episode, I'm thinking of kind of just a chill conversation discussing a bit of philosophical questions, not really anything too serious. Um, Also, would like to put it out there, we are still doing our donation fund for Kvinnokoran, which we will be doing for a while. And of course, I encourage you to visit their website and even considering donating via their Swish number. So that would be really appreciated. So let's get started. So for today, I have some philosophical questions which I ran into while trying to figure out what to do with this episode, and so I found 205 philosophical questions for you to ponder. Now, 205 questions is a lot to go through, so I'm thinking that we'll do like I don't know. Uh, we'll see how far we get. I mean, we have a couple of minutes to spend, so why not join me when I go through these different philosophical questions? And of course, if you would like to participate, you can do that by just commenting down in the comment section below after watching this video, for an example. Okay, so let's get into it. So, the first question, is free will real or just an illusion? Now, that question in itself, free will, I mean, of course, we have a free will. That's pretty like, I mean, we are aware of it, or at least our perception of free will is there. But of course, we, I don't know if we would be able to tell if we really had free will or if we were some way controlled by a by a bigger meaning, perhaps. I don't know whether that would be God or a corporation or a government. Who knows? Uh, of course, we as individuals choose what we want to do with our, so to speak, free will. But of course, um, your thoughts and your actions are always seen by everyone and everything around you, and of course, you only expressing your free will in some way incite the potential risk for uh, different, perhaps harmful reactions by those around you. Um, I would, however, say that, and in that way, I would say that free will in itself could perhaps be just our way of trying to think that we are free when we are just um, we are prisoners of our surroundings, basically. Of course, we can express our free will, but it is usually at a great cost. Uh, Next question. Is there a meaning to life? If so, what is it? This one is a very interesting question, I would say. I myself am not really the religious type, but or at least I would hope so, that there is, of course, a meaning to why we're here, why I am sitting here talking to you, or why the world is as it is. But of course, there could also be the perspective that uh, there is like the world is just a bunch of ones and zeros, that there is no destiny, there is no meaning, there is only thoughts and actions, and that we are basically just a part of a bigger, ever expanding picture, which will go ever onward. And so the question is whether perhaps more the world is romantic or realistic, in the sense that we as humans want to perhaps believe that our lives have meanings by romanticizing a picture of perhaps destiny, uh, and of course plans of doing different things when we get older, perhaps. Um, but of course, also in one way, our futures are also sometimes determined by other people or the environment around us. Again, we are entering into the same problem as with the last question, since of course we have we have our own way of seeing the world, and we can, at least in our we perceive at least that our life in a way has that there is a meaning to it, there is a destiny that we have. But of course there is also the consideration that we are also at the same time um, being judged and always uh, constantly being battered down by people who do not have the same views as you as an individual have. Uh, I would say that, for me at least, in my opinion, I would say that there is hopefully a meaning to life, and that our, so to say, role in this society is in some way, I wouldn't say it's perhaps predetermined, but I mean, we choose how we want to interpret the meaning of life. And I think that individualism is, and in the individualistic perspective is important when discussing this. So I would believe that that's how you would approach this question, or at least that's how I approach it. Um, this is a really good question. Where is the line between art and not art? Now, I myself am a believer of like being able to separate the artist from the art. Or I guess in the sense, I guess the question is more, when is art not art? So, because that's kind of the thing. The problem with art is that it's very fluent. It's not constrained like other concepts. I mean, anything can be art as long as you as an individual uh, perceive it as art and you accept it as art in a sense. So anything can be art if you so choose to see it as art. Um, I think that art in itself is just an universal concept, since I was going to say that chaos perhaps is a form of non-art, but chaos in itself can be a form of art. Not everything has to be in order. I mean, it reflects our lives in a way. I mean, our lives aren't always in order. I mean, sometimes there's chaos, and that in a way is also art in some sense. So I wouldn't really say that there isn't to any that there really is a line for what is not art. For art in itself is a concept of life and meaning of life, since we want to portray life uh, by carving it into something or painting it and showing it visually to someone, or perhaps even just to yourself. So, yeah. What should be the goal of humanity? Uh, I would say that our current goal for now is that we should strive to unite as a people and try to actually overcome our prejudices against or amongst ourselves, since I think that our biggest problem is that our way of seeing each other and how we take our differences as something negative, and we put it into these different stereotypes, and we start perceiving things as dangerous, or and well, we basically take out the individual and put the individual into a collective. And I think it's a pretty uh uh primordial or ancient like practice. I don't believe that we should strive to keep having that instinct. We should try to overcome it, and we should try to strive instead to unite, since we are the same species. I mean, we are exactly the same, or perhaps not exactly the same, but we are the same species, and thus why shouldn't we then strive to unite as one? uh, so that would be the first goal, to stop fighting amongst ourselves and see our differences as a problem, and instead seeing our differences instead as a beneficial factor that we can learn from each other, instead of seeing ourselves as between ourselves as enemies, and instead seeing that we have so much more potential, that we can achieve so much more together, that we are stronger together. I was thinking of one quote Abraham Lincoln said, which was, uh, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." I do believe that's how it went. That's how he said it anyway. Uh, and he, on that quote, he's exactly right. Since I mean, we can see, like, even in today's society with the war in Ukraine, uh, which is a conflict which you can connect to history, like far, far back into the past. And I mean, in itself, it's a very primitive way of, well, we shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves. We should be uniting and striving for a better future for our species. And thus, we have to first unite in order to actually achieve something greater. In a sense, I guess a utopia, perhaps. Uh, so, the next question. Does fate exist? If so, do we have free will? So we're going back to free will again. Um, does fate exist? This is again a bit of a going back to free will and meaning of life. Fate in itself is, I think, since I mean it's a manifestation of how we perceive the world, and we try to romanticize the meaning of life by thinking that we are led by fate, and then perhaps that pretty much our lives are already destined, and that we have a set course which we cannot change. So I wouldn't say that I believe in fate, since I think that if we as individuals change our behavior when we contradict fate, since fate in itself is about how it predicts your future. For example, in Oedipus by God damn it, I can't remember his name now. But in the book Oedipus, basically the whole uh the whole book is about Oedipus trying to avoid his fate, which is basically to kill his father and to marry his mother. But he basically and he becomes aware of this fate by an oracle. But the funny thing is that he's so consumed by knowing of his fate that he ironically um, goes on the path, which then of course transpires into him doing exactly that which fate decreed. So and basically the whole my understanding of it is that because he was so scared of his own fate and he was so unwilling to change, he stayed the same, but he got like really paranoid. But I think that what would break fate and the concept of fate is that if we change our nature, if we change the way we look on things, if we change our behavior, we can overcome fate and we can become more than that. So I wouldn't really say that I do believe that fate exists. Um, the next question, I'm looking over these different questions. All of them are interesting in their own way. Uh, how will humans as a species go extinct? This one's a bit of uh, a bit darker question, but I mean, I think that if I would answer it, I wouldn't really believe that since it's so hard to say, given our current situation, it's so hard as an individual to kind of in a perspective see how we as a species would go extinct. Since you have all of these theories, you have I mean, you have so many ways which could potentially end our very being. Um, I either since when we're going backtracking to the goal of humanity, which is uniting as one. Uh, and of course, if we aren't able to do that, we will we will meet our own demise. We will be like we will be our greatest enemy, um, and we will, in the worst case, be the downfall of ourselves. But if we overcome that, I mean, I do believe that there is a saying that species always either evolve or they at some point go extinct. It's just how it is. So all species eventually go extinct. I mean, and that doesn't mean that I know when. I mean, we can talk about perhaps I mean, if we were able to set aside our differences and unite as one people and venture out into space, I mean, we would perhaps be able to live on and on and on. And I mean, now I'm like getting really ahead of myself, but if we're looking like at the end of the universe, at the end of the lifespan of the universe, the stars, and perhaps even black holes, I mean, what's left is just we as a species just drifting around in a void, nothing else. And that in itself can perhaps feel terrifying. But I mean, it's billions upon billions of years from now, so I mean, but still in itself. But I do think that we first have to unite as a people, and of course, and I think that's our greatest challenge ahead as a species. Either we unite or we will, perhaps in the worst case, unfortunately, perish due to our ignorance and lack of self-improvement, basically. Um, Let's see here. Next question. Can human nature be changed? Should it be changed? Now, this one's interesting, given our current situation. I mean, I do believe that currently we as a species are in a transition. We have recently come out of two world wars from the previous century, and we have overcome this. I mean, at least in a way, we've overcome this threat of killing off ourselves by these atrocious conflicts for the moment being. Of course, there are wars currently happening. They should not be overshadowed. But we have not seen a real major conflict, a world war for almost a century now. And of course, if we're able to contain violence, contain conflicts, we of course have the potential of overcoming the need and desires and greed of power hungry people. So I do say that human nature in itself, I think I kind of drifted away there, but um, humans are very adaptable, but our nature is still the same. We are still a part of nature. We are a species. We are technically an animal. And I mean, you cannot just change your nature unless you would in some way find a way to do it with like really advanced technology, perhaps. But then we're talking, I don't know. Since I mean we're very rapidly as a species also developing new technology. We're constantly improving ourselves. And even now, we see the question being brought up of genetically modified uh, humans. Of course, that won't happen. I mean, at least in our lifetime. I I think at least. I mean, it's a huge step, but I mean, we're on the way to opening. I mean, we're on the doorstep to opening a new chapter in human history, I think. And but it's like we're still on the edge. We're in between. We're in a transition phase, as I said, since it is now kind of, I think, that will determine whether we are ready to change as a species, to look beyond our destructive nature and perhaps unite and improve the betterment of all humankind, uh, and of course our world which we live in. So I think that, but then the question, would we be able to do it? I think it comes to what changes will happen during this transition phase. What we like, what are we will we really like be able to have the energy to change ourselves and to change this greedy nature which we sometimes have as a species? So I think it all comes up to uh, people in power's decisions, but also, of course, the decisions of the people. So yeah, it remains to be seen. Uh, will religion ever become obsolete? Now, as I said, I'm not much of a religious person, but I do have I have kind of a, I mean, I've thought about this a long time. It kind of goes for the same with languages. I mean, it's kind of the same question whether like different minor languages in our world will die out eventually. And I mean, there are so many languages previously in history which we now have, like some of them which we have once again revived from thanks to archaeologists and historians. But uh, as concerning with religion, I think that religion in itself is still very important to the well-being of many humans. Um, we kind of have a need to find a purpose with life, going back to the meaning of life. And one of those meanings are, of course, seeking a uh, divine sort of meaning to it, that there is a greater being out there, perhaps, or that there is an afterlife. And we have a hard time, as like religion itself, it's just, it can be a bit of a loose concept. I mean, at least in my opinion, since I mean, you yourself can have your own understanding of religion, or you can have your own like religious beliefs. Uh, of course, you have all of these recognized religions, but then we're going back to the individual, what they believe in, since they have, I mean, surely I mean, even I have my own uh, thoughts on divinity and what I think. Uh, so I do believe that perhaps um, I do believe that while religion for now won't be obsolete, since we're still in such a great need of it, uh, since I mean we're still divided, the world in itself can be a very chaotic place, and we need somewhere to uh, go to. We need to find a greater meaning to our lives, and we can do that through divinity. But I don't know. It's a really hard question, actually. I since I mean we've always had religions throughout human history. We haven't. I mean, there haven't been one part of like human culture which hasn't had some sort of religious sort of influence, since we've always needed religion in some way. Like, I mean, religion has been used for different reasons, but um, I think that the I think that divinity in itself will stay for a long time in the perceivable future, at least. So, yeah. Okay. So that was some of the questions which I found most interesting, I guess. As I said, it's very unfortunate that Alim could not be present for this episode, but hopefully he will return. Uh, we are praying for his safe return to this podcast, of course. But anyways, without further ado, thank you for listening. Uh, Comment anything down below if you feel like you want to join, you have your own opinions on something, on some of the questions which I discussed today. And of course, remember to subscribe, like, and share because it means a lot. And of course, remember to visit the website Kvinnojouren to find out more about them, what they do, and what their goals are. And it would be really appreciated if you would help them in their efforts to better our society. So, thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.